Hello there, I'm the Biblical Translator, and today's scripture is taken from Luke 6:39. Then Jesus gave the following illustration. Can one blind person lead another? Won't they both fall in a ditch? No pupil is greater than his teacher, but every pupil, when he has completed his training, will be like his teacher. Now, when you think about the blind leading the blind, I'm not even sure if that's politically correct, because when somebody is blind, it doesn't mean that they're totally disabled. They have other facets or other senses that compensate for the blindness. But it does mean that two people with similar deficiencies or similar disabilities will find it very, very difficult to guide each other. It's like when two people are inexperienced in the same area, how can they guide and direct? They can't. You need some form of balance. So if you have a blind person with somebody who can see, that person can compensate for the deficiency in the blind person. And likewise, if you have somebody who's deficient in an area and you have somebody who can compensate for the area where that person is deficient, there's a form of balance. And when I believe, this is always my opinion when I'm reading the Bible, I believe that this chapter is about compensating for those people who are deficient or who lack the same experience or who lack the same temperament or whatever it is. When you have relationships, a lot of them work because each party is able to balance the other. You have somebody who's good at accounting and somebody who's good at cooking and somebody who's good at looking after the children and someone who's good at looking after the housework. But there's a balance. And when you have a balance and somebody can help you in the area where you are lacking, that's what you call a relationship, and that's what you call a balance. You can't have two people in the same area and expect to succeed and expect to drive forward. The two of you will fall into a ditch if the two of you fail in the same area or are deficient in the same area. Blind leading the blind, a person ignorant of a subject is getting advice from someone just as ignorant of the subject. That's the definition in Google. But it's more or less what I'm saying anyway, but I just didn't like the word ignorant, to be honest. One pupil, no pupil is greater than his teacher, but every pupil, when has completed his training, will be like his teacher. And that is talking about there's always a hierarchy. Some people don't like to take orders. Some people don't like to take instructions. And you have young people or even old students. You have people of any age who don't like to be taught. They don't like to be told anything. They feel as though you're talking down to them when you tell them to do something or ask them to do something. They feel as though, oh, who are you to tell me, you think you're too big for your boots. Why are you telling me this? And you have people with that attitude. But a pupil is not going to be like the teacher unless he learns from the teacher. And if that pupil feels as though he or she knows it all, how is that pupil going to learn? How is that pupil going to improve? How is that pupil going to be able to set a precedent and become a role model for another pupil coming up? So we all have to be willing to be pupils. We all have to be willing to serve. We all have to be willing to learn. And it comes from a place of humility. No one is better than the other. We are all the same in the eyes of the Father. And we have to remember that. We have to remember obedience. Obedience takes humility. For somebody to say, give me that, whether they say it in a nice way or a derogatory way or whichever way they say it, for somebody to say, give me that, and you are obedient and you do not ask questions, do you know how much that takes out of a person? Do you know how much humility and courage it takes out of a person to be obedient? The Bible encourages obedience, but obedience is very, very difficult. We live in a world where people have egos, where people have insecurities, where people are just not there. I don't know, that's not even the correct definition, but you have people who cannot take instructions. It's just beyond them. They see every instruction as a slight. They see every request as a demand. And they do not know how to be obedient. They do not know how to be humble. And like I said, you know, we live in a world where we're constantly challenged, where we're constantly fighting for our individuality. We're constantly fighting for confidence and self-esteem. And it's a very kind of fine border to know how to respond in certain situations. How do you respond in a way that you don't feel as though somebody is disrespecting you, or you're losing respect for yourself, or you're losing respect for the other person? It's all about how you feel about yourself. When somebody says to you, pass me that, what are you thinking? Are you thinking, oh, they're giving me an order. Who do they think they are? You know, and you have all these voices in your head before you just pass it. You can't just pass it. You have to kind of have these stories that are telling you all the reasons why you shouldn't pass it, all the reasons why you resent passing it, all the reasons about the person who is asking you to pass it, and you've conjured up this big story which might not have any truth at all. When if you are just obedient and humble and you just do it, how much more gracious are you in that position? So I believe, how did I end up on talking about that? Blind leading the blind. Anyway, I don't know how that entered into this subject, but this is about the blind leading the blind, and can one blind person lead another? Won't they both fall into a ditch? All depends. If one blind person has a walking aid or has some kind of other facility that can help guide him, maybe they won't fall into a ditch. But it all depends on the individual. But I think the essence of this scripture is basically try to find a balance in people that you're with. And if you are deficient in an area, don't be too proud to ask for help. Don't feel too proud that if somebody is better at something than you are, don't be too proud to applaud that person, to appreciate that person and ask that person for help. And likewise, where that person might be better in one area than you are, I'm sure you are better in an area than that person is. It's always a balance. God gave us all talents. It's just that some of us use them, some of us don't. Some of us don't know what they are. Some of us haven't found them yet. Some of us take them for granted. There's lots of reasons why there's no balance. But when you're in relationship, it is about balance to make it work. And when I'm not talking about just romantic relationships, I'm talking about working relationships, I'm talking about political relationships, I'm talking about communal relationships. Always try to be that balance so that things can go straight and that you won't be guided into a ditch, but you'll be lifting someone up and they in turn will lift you up. That's all I've got to say for now. I'm the Biblical Translator. I hope this scripture has helped somebody, and that's all for now. Bye-bye.